Welcome to Truckee Talks. I'm your host, Maya Schneider. Or maybe I should say welcome back to Truckee Talks. We've been on a little summer break. It's good to be back in the studio. And with us are some old friends from the Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation. Jim Porter, member of the board. Jim, nice to have you on the show.
Hi, Maya.
And Lisa Dobey, the executive director. Lisa, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Well, we've talked about Community Foundation before, but Jim, if you would tell us, and you've really been involved since its inception, what is a Community Foundation?
Well, a community foundation is a community-based, nonprofit philanthropic organization that, in our case, we have a 12-member board of directors, and we collect funds, donations, and invest those funds. We have a professional money manager that invests those funds. We hold the funds as an endowment, as principal, and then the interest off the funds are used to go into the community in the form of grants. And it's a long-term organization that obviously, as you build up your endowment, it stays in place and remains into perpetuity in the community.
How long has the Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation been around?
It's been about 3 years.
So it's fairly new. It's
fairly new. I remember when I first got the call from Mr. Hewlett's attorney, he called and said, Jim, would you, I'd done some work for Mr. Hewlett, and he said, would you, Mr. Hewlett would like to give something back to the community, and would you be willing to work with the other people in the community and start a community foundation? I said I'd be more than happy to do so. Of course, I didn't even know what a community foundation was.
Right, but say yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a problem, so we can do it, and that's where we got started.
Lisa, how is the Community Foundation doing?
We are doing great. Our assets are now about $5.5 million that we are able to permanently protect for the community. And what that means is we give out 5% of that and the value of that in the form of grants. And that money is there in perpetuity, so every year we're able to give off grants to support needs and opportunities that occur in our region.
Well, what separates a community foundation from other philanthropic organizations? Certainly in our community, there are a number of not-for-profit or non-profit organizations whose drive it is really to raise funds and promote a service or an activity. How does the Community Foundation differ?
Part of that is the endowment, that you create a principal fund that remains in place year after year. Most contributions, you make a donation to the Boy Scouts or something, it goes to the Boy Scouts and it's used. It's passed right through to a good purpose. Mm-hmm. And in a community foundation, it's you hold those funds and it's just the interest. So the endowment continues to grow. And I mean, we started with nothing and we're at $5.5 million now, so it's working.
And one of the things I particularly like about endowments, and which is the reason I think community foundations are so different from other organizations, is if someone makes a gift today, and again we pay out that 5%, after 20 years you've actually given away more money than your original donation. So it's a wonderful way to continue giving forever and ever in our community.
And that's really the point to building an endowment versus just passing monies through.
Correct. And I think for us, especially in a community such as ours, we don't know what the issues and the problems and the concerns and even the opportunities may be 20 years from now or 100 years from now. But what we do know is that there'll be a fund available in this community to respond to those needs, whatever they may be.
Well, let's say I want to make a gift to the Community Foundation.
We'll take it.
Okay.
Well, that would be a sizable gift.
Yeah, I'm sure that it would, right. That would be 58 cents is about what I have in my checking account right now.
That's fine.
How do you differentiate between monies that, say, I might want to direct to a particular kind of activity in the community versus monies that would go to the endowment, to building that base?
It's a great question, and what a lot of people do is what's called a donor advised fund, where you put your let's say you gave, in your case, $100,000
sure,
as a
easily.
Contribution,
right.
And that would be held in a fund in your name, and you and your family can advise as to how you'd like to have the money spent. So you get a write-off in the year that you make the contribution, and then for years, I mean forever, you get to say, here's what I'd like to have happen with the interest. So today, your passion may be the environment, and then in a few years you may want to be more specific and give it to something else. And so you get to recommend to the foundation how that money is spent, and they'll always honor your wishes. And so you get to live with the foundation.
Well, and how is that for you as the director, Lisa, managing these various directions that people want to send their money?
Well, it's part of the fun work that we do with donors. A lot of times we have donors who have a particular interest but don't know the specific organization that might be doing the best work, might be able to do something very innovative or something that's different from what other groups are doing. So I spend a lot of time talking with donors about different options they may have. And I find that especially true with our second homeowner donors who are very passionate about this community and really, really want to be able to invest in the community, but may not know which organization is doing good work. And so we spend time talking with them about different organizations. And since our focus as a community foundation is working with all the nonprofits in the community, we really have a good sense of what organizations are out there and what they're doing and can give good direction to donors on places that they might be interested in. So it works both ways. We provide information to them and they get to tell us some of the things that are important to them.
So you're really a conduit, two ways.
Absolutely.
To the nonprofit organizations in our community. Well, we've featured, excuse me, a number of people, a number of groups on this show over the last 5 years, but you probably have a much better handle on who's out there than we do. How do they, let's flip this around and look at the Community Foundation from the other side. How would an organization go about applying for monies from the Community Foundation?
Well, as Jim said, we have sort of two pots of money. We have the donor advised funds where donors get to choose where they'd like their dollars to go. And then we also have unrestricted dollars where donors have said, you all know what's best going on in the community. You all identify what the priorities are. You make the decisions on where those funds should go. And so twice a year we have grant-making process where nonprofits in the community can actually apply to us for those unrestricted funds. And it's a competitive process. We advertise it in the newspapers. We try to get it out to as many folks as possible so that they can apply to us for funds. And it's a pretty rigorous process where we have a group of 13 volunteers from the community who review these proposals. And they sit down and they meet with the individual organizations and talk with them. We make sure that they're doing what they say they're doing, that their projects are going to be manageable and doable. And then that group of volunteers make recommendations to our board on which organizations that they think should be funded based on this application and the dollars that we have available. We, of course, always have more money. We have more applications than we do money available.
It's difficult to make the cuts because there's so many worthwhile organizations and needs. And you have to draw the line someplace. But it's the group that work with us, the grants committee and the volunteers are just put a lot of effort into it, a lot of time, and it shows.
Well, Jim, let's bring that back because I was going to ask you about that. What does the makeup of the board look like? How do people serve on the board? How do they get involved if they wanted to be involved, or do you serve terms? How does all that structure?
It's a lifetime term.
That sounds more like a sentence.
It's a lifetime privilege.
That's what I meant to say. That's why you're the executive.
That's right.
Well, we have 12 people on the board. It's a great board. Just a fantastic community activist group that are involved in a lot of things and fingers in a lot of pies. And we have 4 different committees. There's a grants committee, and we have a lot of volunteers on that. That's the committee that I stay away from. It's very time-consuming and a lot of work. It's a lot of fun. Most of the people want to get on that committee because you get to have the fun of how you're going to spend the money. Mm-hmm. And then there's an executive committee and a finance committee and a marketing committee. And we always have room for people to get involved. We're always looking for either volunteers and sometimes just ambassadors, people that want to get involved to learn a little bit more about it and go out and talk the talk and then kind of explain to people how they can get involved with the Community Foundation. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think one of the things we really look for in board members, since we are a regional organization, our sort of geographic boundaries go up to Donner Summit, the west shore and the north shore of the lake, and throughout all of Truckee. We try to get a good balance geographically of board members, but we also want to make sure they're people who know what's going on in the community and can be our liaison back and forth between what's going on in the community and what's going on at the Community Foundation. Because that's what we're really about, is building that community.
You spoke earlier about how do you sift through the various applications, and that must be a rigorous process and certainly more detailed than what we're allowed to, or what we can go through in the time of this program. But what sort of grants are you looking to make? What sort of organizations are you looking to serve?
What we've traditionally done, and again, we're a fairly new organization, so our grant making is evolving. But what we have, the strategy we have chosen at the beginning of our life stage, so to speak, is to make smaller dollar amounts to more organizations. And part of that was really us wanting to get our name out and for organizations to know that we exist. And we also wanted to be real careful not to have the appearance that we're only funding arts organizations, or we're only funding human services or environment. So we fund very broadly. We fund in arts, we fund in civic benefit, I will not get all of these, human services, what am I missing? Youth, recreation. Healthcare. So we fund very, very broadly. I hope as we grow and we have more dollars to give away, we'll be able to make some larger grants that can truly make some tremendous impact in the community. But we also get a lot of feedback from organizations that they value the ability of having money that's more flexible. It's not government dollars where they don't have much flexibility in how they use it. And that even though we have smaller dollar amounts, they have a lot more ability to try things or to use it to fill a specific gap.
To innovate.
Yeah.
Oversight. Once you've made a grant, is there any oversight beyond that, or?
Absolutely. We ask that each organization report back to us at the end of their funding cycle, which is generally a year, and let us know how the project went, how the funds were expended, and what worked and what didn't work. And we try to make that a manageable process for organizations. We realize that we're not giving them tons of dollars, so we don't want to make it a burdensome process to do an evaluation, but we still need accountability and still want to make sure that we can report back to the community that the dollars that they gave to us are dollars that are well spent.
You also mentioned, Lisa, working with the other nonprofits. One thing that I have found the Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation to be is sort of a library of resources if I need information for a nonprofit. Was that a goal? Am I abusing my friendships here, or is this something that other nonprofits are taking advantage of?
It's something that other nonprofits are taking advantage of, and it's something that's really, really important to us. We have a program officer, Tamara Lieberman, who has worked in the field of nonprofits for many, many years and has been an executive director and has a tremendous amount of credibility with the nonprofits in our community. And she spends a lot of time providing moral support, providing information. If she sees a grant possible funding source that she thinks an organization might be able to apply for, she makes sure they get it. She encourages people to try new things. When she finds trainings out there that she thinks might be good, she sends those to people. And we also provide some ongoing training to nonprofits as well. So we think that's the other half of our equation. One is fundraising, and one is providing support to the nonprofits.
And certainly that's a lot of help for a lot of fledgling nonprofits that may have a specific task that nobody else is undertaking in our community.
And it's a real way of making sure that the dollars that we invest are well invested by improving the management of the nonprofits themselves.
Okay, well, we'll be back in just a minute with our guest. We're talking about the Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation. When we come back, we'll talk about a recent forum they held on arts in the community. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Truckee Talks. We're here with our guests, Jim Porter and Lisa Dobey from the Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation. And when we left off, we had been talking about grant making in our community. Jim, tell us a little bit, or Lisa, how much is actually awarded on an annual basis through the Community Foundation?
Actually, I wrote it down so I would get the exact dollars and numbers right.
To the minute.
That's good, because you're going to be tested on this.
Well, this is actually for last fiscal year, for our fiscal year. And last year we awarded 93 grants to 60 different organizations. And it totaled, you ready? $469,472.52.
Jim, that's $500,000 into our
bad,
community.
Huh?
How does that make you feel?
That's pretty good. That's pretty darn good. I didn't realize it was that high. Yeah.
Yes.
That's amazing. And that's really, that's not touching the endowment. That's not dipping into the principal.
That is not dipping into the principal. Some of that is money that donors gave to us and then wanted it spent.
Right, specifically directed
Right.
to
Right.
give this money to.
It's into the community.
Goes
Right.
into the community.
Right.
Well, okay, so
it's
the
pretty
other
impressive.
side of awarding $469,472
And 52 cents.
and 52 cents, I want to know who's out there asking for a grant that has 52 cents on the end of it. How do you get that money? How does the Community Foundation raise the money to spend in the community?
Hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the part I like the best, but it's time consuming, and we get about half of our money from locals, and businesses, and individuals, and about half from out of the area, which is pretty interesting. That many people from out of the area want to do the right thing and to enhance the community where they spend some time, and that's how Mr. Hewlett happened to make his contribution, because he'd spent a lot of summers up here. A lot of it is through just contributions, donations. We have a program called the 10K Club where you can donate $2,500 a year for 4 years. Community foundations often will work with wills and trusts, where you can do all sorts of fancy things with your wills. You can outright leave money to the community foundation. You can leave property. You can leave a house. You can leave any kind of valuables to the community foundation. And like I said earlier, you get a write-off for all of that. Sometimes you can get very sophisticated and you can make a contribution to the community foundation and then reserve the interest off of that contribution to yourself. So you have an income for the rest of your life, and then when you die, then the interest as well as the principal goes to the foundation, and you can do the reciprocal of that. So there's all sorts of ways to do it, and it's very flexible. I mean, how it's done.
Well, I think that's probably the most important thing, is that we make it very easy for people to give to us. I think one of the reasons people like using community foundations is they can use a variety of vehicles to their philanthropic needs. And we see it especially true with couples, where one person has one set of interests and want to give to one types of organization, and the other half of the couple wants to give to different type of organizations. They can make one donation to us and then be able to recommend that it go to a variety of places.
We save a lot of marriages that way.
That could be one of our one of our new marketing slogans.
Does that damage the other side of your life in terms of business, Jim? Or no, you're not. You're not in family law.
We don't do
That's all
that,
right.
yeah.
I think the other thing that we do is sometimes people need to make a donation for a tax reason immediately,
Right.
but don't really have an idea of what they want to do with those dollars. And again, they can make that. They've sold a business. They've theoretically made a lot of money in the stock market, which hasn't been true this year
Not
so
lately,
much.
right.
But make a donation to us and then decide at a later date where or how they'd like to spend that money or how they'd like to disperse it. So we make it real simple. We get lots of phone calls the last week of the year of people trying to put money away for tax
Sure, their tax
deduction,
year for business reasons
and
or
then we'll
personal.
want to make the decision later of how that money gets used.
So Lisa, if they need some help in directing a gift, if they're not sure how to go about it, would they go to their tax consultant first, or would they go to the community foundation first? What would be the best route to take?
It doesn't really matter. Whichever way a person feels most comfortable. Certainly someone could go to his or her CPA or tax advisor or financial planner, estate planning attorney, any of those people, and talk about their charitable interest and intent. If the person comes to us first, we'll generally refer them back to their attorney or CPA or financial advisor to make sure that they're getting the best advice they can get for their own situation.
One of the things that I like to remind people is that a little bit of money, or even a lot of money, can make so much of a difference in our community. Mm-hmm. I have a friend that left a lot of money to the Park Service. And I just kept thinking, my God, what kind of a hole is that going to go into, you know?
Yeah.
And that kind of money in our community would make a difference. And so that other people would want to give to a university. I mean, I guess that's just my own prejudice. Some of those universities have a lot of money. And the money in our community, that's what our goal is, to try and keep the money in the community.
Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because when I talk to CPAs and estate planning attorneys, they talk about how much of the charitable dollars leave our community. And again, people give to the Heart Association, they give to their alma mater, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. But part of our educational process is really to encourage people to think about leaving money locally to support the organizations here that are doing such good work.
Well, and again, if your interest is in a particular area but not necessarily a particular organization, you can direct those funds through the community foundation.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about some activities that the Community Foundation has recently been involved in. And I'm looking here at a headline, the Thursday, August 30th, Tahoe World. Foundation explores regional arts issues and facilities. Now, where in the umbrella of the Community Foundation does this fall, and how did you come to be conducting this meeting?
I think one of the roles of a community foundation, I think a very important role for our community foundation, is the ability to convene people. And since our community is really defined by the community itself and not by a county boundary, for example, I think we really have a chance to look at the community regionally and bring people together to look at issues on a regional basis. And that was really the genesis for this arts forum. In the 3 years that I've been at the Community Foundation, people have been talking about the need for an arts facility, the need for coordination of arts organizations, a master calendar, and our goal is simply to get everyone in the same room and let people talk. And that's what the town hall meeting was about. Over 85 people showed up. There was this tremendous amount of energy in the room of people wanting to talk about what our regional vision for the arts should be. And we had great fun with it. We actually will be getting a report back from our consultants at the end of this week that will synthesize all this information that people gave out.
Great to galvanize, because I know there are a number of different organizations or just groups or clusters of people who were interested and or working on this independently. And getting them all together and joining forces, that synergy has to be something productive.
And there's a lot of questions out there. People have questions about who are our audience. Are we trying to build arts for the second homeowner population, the tourism population, or for local residents? If we build a facility, do we want it to be an indoor facility or an outside facility? Do we want it to be, who do we want to have live in it? What's the purpose of the facility?
And the answer is yes to all of those, right?
And the answer is yes to all of those. But really to talk through some of those issues. And I think it's something that we'll continue to work on over the next year, following up from this town hall meeting.
But I think that's great to have one organization in town that's sort of an umbrella organization for people to be an information conduit, really.
Right, and we don't have an agenda. I mean, the Community Foundation has no outcome that we're working toward on this arts project. It's really just to bring the community together and let them be able to move forward.
Jim, Lisa mentioned second homeowners, local residents, and there may be a disparity in how those people view our community or how they use our community, if you will. You mentioned half of the funds we've received have been local, and the other half have been from folks out of the area. That's significant.
It surprised me how much money came from out of the community.
And you mentioned off camera also that there's been a significant amount of money that's been brought in to the community as a result of this Community Foundation.
I think one of our best success stories is the money that we, as the Community Foundation, has been able to bring in, and not just to the foundation. In fact, not to the foundation at all, but to different organizations. And Lisa can elaborate on it. And it comes from being affiliated with the Hewletts. Just the Hewlett name is so. There's such a wonderful family and fine philanthropists that other people want to be associated with that.
Yes.
And then Lisa has lots of contacts in the Bay Area, and you should tell some of the stories. We've done some pretty good accomplishments.
Well, I think just the existence of a community foundation attracts other dollars. For example, we are able to re-grant money from the California Endowment, which is an enormous foundation in Southern California that looks at healthcare issues, but they don't know who's doing good work in Truckee, Tahoe region. And what they've done is made one grant to us and then allowed us to re-grant it out to smaller organizations in the area. And that works for them because they only are managing one grant, and it works for us because we're able to funnel dollars to organizations that
really need it.
That really need it and would never be able to apply to the California Endowment on their own because they're too small and not on the radar screen.
Really.
Yes. So that's exciting to be able to do that. I think the other good example of that is, I guess 2 years ago we held a town hall meeting around family resource centers, and the Cowell Foundation gave a little bit of money to continue doing research. And from that, there are now 2 family resource centers that exist in our community.
Right. Yeah. Very positive step.
Yeah, that's just great.
And there are any number of stories with local nonprofits, certainly nonprofits I've been involved with, that have successfully been awarded grants from the Community Foundation and are doing good things with that money. So I congratulate both of you. Lisa Dobey, Jim Porter, thank you both for being on the show. And thanks for enlightening us more about the Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation. For information about the Community Foundation, their telephone number is 587-1776, and you can call them to get more information on how to give or how to be involved with the Community Foundation. Thank you both again for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks,
as always.
Thanks for joining us on Truckee Talks, and we'll see you next time.